I was at a couple farmer pioneer cemeteries out in the middle of nowhere this weekend, and I looked at a headstone in particular, and it got me thinking about a certain situation that was quite common out here in these old pioneer farmer cemeteries. And I'm going to go into deep detail on the concept of this situation right now. And the concept is a pioneer mother and her newborn baby dies. The father buries his wife and child at a little local pioneer cemetery, but then moves on and starts a new life with a new family elsewhere and is buried sometimes in even a different state, far removed from his first wife and child. The mother and child rest there alone in an old, long forgotten cemetery alongside others that also perished along the way. This situation paints a picture of life and death on the frontier, where hardship was a daily reality and survival often meant moving forward despite personal loss. During the era of westward expansion, pioneer families often faced brutal conditions like disease and childbirth complications, as well as accidents and harsh environmental factors. Childbirth, in particular, was a tough ordeal, and many women perished due to infections, hemorrhaging, or a lack of medical assistance. Infants who were very fragile and vulnerable often did not survive long under such conditions. Burial practices were pragmatic and reflected the transient nature of the frontier life. Families could not linger in mourning for long. Survival depended on moving forward. Small makeshift cemeteries dotted the landscape, often containing the graves of those who perished from sickness, childbirth, or accidents along the way. These cemeteries, once sacred places, were often abandoned as settlements moved or dwindled. The father's decision to move on speaks to the resilience and the painful necessity of frontier life. He buries his wife and newborn, marking their grave in what was meant to be a final resting place. One can imagine his sorrow and guilt. Did he linger for a time, tending their grave, before finally accepting that he must move forward? Or did he leave quickly, unable to bear the weight of his grief? Either way, his decision to start anew elsewhere suggests a coping mechanism common to many pioneers. Survival meant continuing, even if it meant leaving loved ones behind. As the years pass, he remarries, builds a new family, and is ultimately buried alongside them. This final act of separation reinforces the theme of moving forward, but also of division. The mother and child remain tied to the past, while the father's grave reflects the future he forged without them. The pioneer cemetery where the mother and child are buried would over time become forgotten. Perhaps once tended by early settlers, it eventually fades from memory as towns shift, families move, and nature reclaims the land. The gravestones wear down, names become unreadable, and stories are lost. Yet the mother and child are not alone in their solitude. They rest among others who also perished along the way, victims of disease, childbirth, accidents, or violence. They share a silent kinship with the other forgotten souls, each one a reminder of the countless individuals who sacrificed for a future they would never see. The mother and child's fate highlights the sheer vulnerability of pioneers, especially the women and infants. It speaks to the sacrifices made by those who paved the way for future generations. The father's choice to move on, to build a new life and be buried elsewhere, symbolizes the unyielding nature of time. The past, no matter how painful, is often left behind. Over time, the cemetery is forgotten, its inhabitants are nameless, yet their presence lingers in the landscape. It poses the question, are we ever truly forgotten, or does the land itself remember? In life, the family was torn apart by tragedy. In death, the father's resting place alongside his second family further emphasizes this division. Was he haunted by his first loss, or did he find solace in his new life? While history moves forward, places like this remain hidden, overgrown, whispering forgotten stories to the wind. Perhaps one day, someone stumbles upon the graves, brushing off the dirt and reading what little remains. And in that moment, the mother and child live again, if only in memory.